a lot of people are saying that New World is dead. For a lot of reasons, and you can agree with it or not, but a lot of people are quitting the game. So I thought it would be a good idea to make a little video on which MMOs you can actually play instead that are similar in some ways or another to New World. Subscribe to the channel for more content of this. Go to my Ko-Fi if you want to support me, and let's get into it. First, Elder Scrolls Online. I think Elder Scrolls Online is not a bad choice, considering the fact that some kind of combat, the content is kind of similar. You do have PvP zones where you can fight each other. You know, it's a kind of in some ways PvP-centered game. It is definitely way more complex in terms of how much abilities you have, more than New World, of course, but I don't think it's a bad idea. The amount of siege that you have, the open world PvP like this, it's just very, 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 very cool. And because New World has that in their essence as a game, it is, I think, something that you should consider. Now, of course, maybe the combat is not going to be perfect for you, but it is something that might make you want to try it in the first place, of course. Also, ESO has housing just like New World, which is pretty fun. It doesn't work in the same way as it works in New World, but it still is there, so you can actually use it if that is what you're interested in. Overall, ESO is honestly a pretty good choice considering the combat is very close together. They have a good amount of similarity in terms of content, and of course also, well, it's also a buy-to-play game just like New World. Final Fantasy 14, probably not so much. The combat is completely different. The story is completely different. It focuses on on things that New World really doesn't. The truth is, in Final Fantasy, even though it's a good game, it's mainly focused on story, PvE, and even though it does have PvP, a little bit at least, it's just not the main focus. And New World, because of the way that the combat works, it's way more dynamic and fast. This game having, a global cooldowns every time you attack, and being a long one at that, while at the same time having a very static type of combat and not very focused on PvP and very focused on story, I think makes this not a really good choice for any New World player. It doesn't really have good PvP there. It does have some, but not in the way that New World really emphasizes in the open world PvP, I think. World of Warcraft, same thing as Final Fantasy. They just focus on different things completely. And even though it's a good game and you can definitely try it, I don't really think it's, not in terms of combat, not in terms of content. I don't think it really is a good choice. Black Desert. Black Desert is actually pretty good, I think. Yeah, it's not the same type of combat at all, but you do have a lot of PvP on it. If you really like that in New World, you have a lot of, well, the combat is very different, right? But you have, open world PvP as well, zones, guild versus guild events, right? You do have a lot of that is very, important in New World, a very big focus of what New World really is. So I don't think it's a bad choice at all. It does not have, in any of these games that we talked before, though, don't really have the, gathering of New World, really. And I think the only one that I'm going to mention that actually does have, the insane amount of gathering and progression of gathering that New World has is the next one, which is Old School Runescape. Getting skills there, leveling them up, mining for hours and hours, gathering for hours and hours is something that is a very important part of New World, and I don't think any game in this list really has that more than OSRS. There's a reason why a lot of people that played OSRS really wanted to play New World and try it out, because it really is very similar in at least that aspect, the grinding aspect, the beautiful world aspect, and going around and just collecting stuff and, using those materials for different things is something that OSRS is very much the king of, and New World in some ways definitely was very close to that as well. Now, for my big pick, of course, is going to be Guild Wars 2, and there's a big reasons, because Guild Wars 2 does have everything that, we talked about before, except of the gathering. We definitely don't have the gathering. If you really want the gathering side of things, definitely go for OSRS. Guild Wars 2 is not going to work, and really no other MMO than OSRS is going to work for you, I don't think. But one of the biggest reasons why I recommend Guild Wars 2 for New World players is because the people that made New World were from Guild Wars 2. A lot of the people that got laid off back in, I think it was 2019, after leaving World Season 4, were actually people that ended up in Amazon developing New World. And it's one of the reasons why the game is so similar. You have a system where you have two weapons that have different abilities, and depending on the weapon, your ability is going to be different, right? You also have the kind of like typical, even inside of New World, you have this like trade line that you would use for your weapons that will make the weapon interact with different essentially traits, which is the same thing we have here, right? Like we have, these 3 lines that you can change, and of course this will affect how your weapons and all your abilities do. Now, of course, it definitely has more attacks than New World has, but you have the swap weapon system where you just will change, and it will change the abilities you have because you have a different weapon, right? There's a lot of things that the combat is very similar. You have the dodge mechanic as well, right? That is very, very important in PvP. You have a big war versus world, guild versus guild PvP open world instances here. Of course, it's not the same as New World. As New World is everything is open, is PvP, right? But the thing is, because there's no opt-in or opt-out in this game mode, you can just go inside of here and just fight each other, right? And look at that. Well, this gamer doesn't have that many people. Usually on a night, there's way more than 20 people. It's like 50 versus 50 versus 50, but you get my point. This is a very focused open world PvP game, which is something that New World really does focus on. Also, of course, have mounts. I guess the Warclaw mount in War vs. World is very much the most similar to the other ones in New World, as you just jump around, and that's kind of what it does. You just go in, and of course you definitely have little abilities or whatever that maybe in New World you wouldn't have. That's kind of, hey, it's kind of similar to it. You definitely have way more in Guild Wars 2 than we do in New World. They're not even close together in terms of how much you do in both games, but the idea of having a mount that has abilities and changes depending on the one that you have, just like in New World, definitely has a thing in Guild Wars 2, just way more complex and way more developed. You of course also have PvP, and of course, it's not really the same one as in New World. As in New World, it was just arena. In here we have instead just a battleground type of combat. You essentially just go in and 5 versus 5, try and capture defense nodes and keep them to get more points, and that's the way you win, which is very, very different than, of course, in New World. But you do have PvP, so well, I guess that's kind of nice if you like that. Of course, I would definitely say that PvP in this game is not the most alive. I think War vs. World for sure is. The open world is very, very alive, and there's a lot of things happening there. But for PvP, not so much. We're definitely getting a new type of game mode for PvP, trying to revitalize it in some way, shape, or form. But we'll see if that actually works in the first place, and we'll see when it actually releases as well. Of course, we also have raids and fractals, which, raids, big bosses, or same thing what New World is gonna get in a few months, and that you go with 10 people and you have to kill them. And of course, fractal bosses. Fractals essentially being the same system as dungeons are in New World, just without the annoying, horrible requirements to get in there. You do need some requirements in Guild Wars 2, and you get daily rotations, but the requirements for like each weapon needs a different each dungeon needs a different resistance does not apply to this. You only need one resistance that is called agony, and once you get it in one character, it's done. Now, I would say it's not a good system. I would argue that they should just delete it, but now that's kind of what it is. Wars 2 also has housing, just like in New World. It's a way more, in my opinion, involved. There's way more things that you can actually do on it. You can actually place most of the decorations yourself wherever you want. You have a huge space to actually use it for. You can put your mounts in there to pet them. I don't know if that's your fashion as well. Big statues with your own character, and many, many, many things if you're if you really like types of housing like this. And for the last thing I want to say that is very close to what Guild Wars 2 has, to what New World has, is the Triple Trouble. In this little spot here, there's actually a big event that happens where you have to kill a huge worm, just like in the worm rain in New World. Now, to be fair, there's 3 worms, and you need 50 people on each of the worms, so 150 people overall, and you have to kill them all at the same time, all with different mechanics that have to be coordinated with people to actually kill them, which is actually a pretty cool thing, and I think it's one of the best events that Guild Wars 2 has. Now, of course, this event is not the only one we have. We have these things called metas, and well, of course, this one is a meta, where you have to do a big boss with a lot of people, 50 plus people, to kill it. Most of them don't really require the coordination that the triple worm requires, but they're still pretty fun and pretty engaging and very epic. So if you like that kind of stuff, this game is definitely good for you. So there you go. You can tell me if you think I'm wrong about everything or not. If you have any good recommendations for New World players, of course, you can leave it in the description down below. Maybe I was wrong about a few other things, or maybe you have better recommendations than I do. Regardless, go there and deal leave a comment down below. Subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Go to my coffee if you want to support me. Go to my Twitch. Everything is in the description. And I see you guys around. Love you all. Bye. Bye.